Welcome to Working Progress. This is the podcast where we dive into strategies for success and journey towards progress. So, what does it mean to lead for the future? How is leadership changing? And why are so many habits that once drove success now holding leaders back? Today, we're diving into the mindset shift from high performer to people leader, how trust and psychological safety drive performance, and how organizations can build leadership pipelines that are ready for what's next. We're also tackling one of the most critical leadership decisions any organization makes. Who will one day succeed the president or CEO? And how founders, executives, and aspiring leaders can prepare for the very different demands of that role. We're joined by Dr. Phillip Shero, whose work helps leaders move beyond titles and past performance to understand true potential, readiness, and future-focused leadership. So let's get started. Dr. Phillip, thank you so much for being here with us today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on the show.
Of course. So just to kick us off a little bit, can you give us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, my background, right after grad school, my wife and I moved to Uganda, East Africa. And we basically had our first career over there. So 15 years in East Africa. And our big project was building and launching a brand new university kind of from the ground up.
Okay.
The focus of that university was developing young leaders who could supply what the countries of East Africa needed. I mean, we've all heard about the brain drain of, people leaving developing nations to go and get education somewhere else, and then they stay and there's a better life, and no one can fault them for that.
Yes.
But the countries back at home are hungry for great leadership. So we wanted to be on the supply side of that equation. So really my first career was developing young leaders.
Beautiful.
And after moving back to the United States in 2013, we started Masterminds Leadership to do the same kind of thing in small and mid-sized companies, privately held companies, to help them develop their own leadership pipelines.
Well, then we have the right guest for this topic today. Well, let's just get into it. And when you think about leading for the future, how is it different from leadership, say, 5 or even 10 years ago?
Yeah, I think the obvious answer people think of is technology because that's changing so fast. But I actually think it's not technology, it's employee expectations.
Okay.
There's a real shift that's been happening, not just in the last 5 or 10 years, but even further back in terms of how people think about employment.
Yep.
It's not just flex time and remote work, although that's a big topic.
Yes, it is.
But it's also how people feel valued, or how they're treated at work, and their awareness and alertness to how other people are treated, even across different social categories or demographics. Even if you're not in that particular demographic, there's much more sensitivity and awareness to that than there was before. So the social rules and expectations are evolving, and if leaders don't stay current with that, then they're going to be perceived as out of touch, and they may even find that people are leaving their leadership and finding other places to work.
Interesting. Like you say, a lot of people would say, oh, it's technology, but it's not. So what leadership behaviors that were once actually rewarded are now actually holding some leaders back?
So obviously, leadership is about getting results through people.
Yes.
But I think the old behaviors that were rewarded were meeting or exceeding expectations.
Okay.
Here's what you're supposed to do, and if you can meet or exceed that, that's rewarded.
Yes.
Today, there's a much bigger need for leaders to bring people along for the journey, and for them to anticipate what's going to be needed and lead toward that. If you just lead off of the set of expectations, here's your goals and your quote on what you're supposed to do. And even if you can bring your people along with you, what I find is senior leaders are looking at that and saying, yeah, but you should have seen this coming, or you should have known how to handle this situation. You should have headed this off. And the new leaders are saying that wasn't in the job description.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was expected.
Okay.
There was an expectation now that you're not just going to achieve the results that are on paper, but you're going to pull people along with you, and you're going to anticipate what's needed and be able to proactively solve problems.
Okay, so not being as robotic, maybe. Just, okay, look, I checked
Yes.
those boxes. Why aren't you happy?
Yeah, and that comes up in promotion conversations,
Yeah.
where someone will come in and say, "Well, look at my performance. Look what I've done," and the leader above them is thinking, "Yes, but there was this office drama issue that you couldn't get around, and you didn't know how to solve, and you let this thing fester, and you didn't squash it, and someone else had to step down into it." That's not necessarily in the job description,
No.
but it's an expectation of leaders, and just meeting or exceeding expectations isn't going to be enough anymore.
That's very true. And like you say, very interesting. It's not, okay, yes, I drove my sales, I did all these things. It can be those little things actually that end up affecting a performance review.
Absolutely.
So, what is one of the biggest mindset shifts required when moving from a high performer into that people leader role? Because that's a big shift.
The number one shift is changing where you locate your value.
Okay.
Because as a high performer, your value, at least from a business perspective, is located in that performance,
Yes.
your ability
Yes.
to get something done. When you're promoted, you have to almost completely let go of that. Not that your performance doesn't matter, but that you can't locate your value there. You have to shift the location to, I am valuable because I enable all of these people to do a great job, and I help them work together. I help them collaborate. I keep it harmonious enough
Yes.
so that it's not detracting from business. That's where my value is. That includes mentoring and developing other people.
Yes.
It includes evaluating who's ready for this or ready for that, giving them the right level of supervision, which is not the same across every employee. Like your
No.
value becomes a very complex box of social skills, and communication ability, and this old performance thing, you have to almost completely let go of it.
Yeah. So, kind of moving from that me to we.
Yes.
And that's a big shift too for some people where no, wait a minute. It's hard to let go of the job that they were doing and completely think in that open manner.
Yes, Shauna, and if I could just speak to some of the aspiring leaders that are watching the show, I would say if you're struggling to change where you locate your value, let me just say that if you hold on to that old value, you will make yourself unpromotable.
Okay.
And I'll say it that strongly because I've been in conversations with executives who wanted to promote someone and couldn't, and they told me why. Because I can't promote this person because there is no one under them who can step up and do their job.
Wow.
In fact, recently, in the last 18 months, there was a leader who was otherwise in their career ready for the move from leadership and management into a senior leadership role, almost an executive role. And they were not able to be promoted because they had not developed anybody under them that could do their job.
Wow.
They were a tremendous performer,
Yeah.
but they were essentially unpromotable, like there would be a gaping hole in the business. And so I just want to encourage people, like, this is not a nice to have, it's a must have.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're making yourself so valuable in one role. You have to remember that if you want to move forward, you have to build everybody up as well. Interesting.
Yeah.
So why do organizations so often then promote these great individual contributors, but they also struggle to support them when they become leaders?
So I think there's two causes for that, and one's on the leader side and one's on the employee side.
Okay.
So I think if I start with the employees, I think a lot of high performers are reluctant to ask for help. So they look like they're doing great until a problem happens, and then their superiors realize this leader we promoted was covering over some gaps they had because they didn't want to ask for help. I think on the organization side, they promoted that person because that's a person who didn't need a lot of supervision.
Uh-huh.
They didn't need a lot of help. So they're used to just like whatever we throw at them, they just crush it and they just run
Yes.
through walls, and that's great. But this promotion is not just a step up, it's a phase shift.
Yeah.
And now the employee does need new kinds of development, and the organization is still thinking, this is the person that doesn't need any of my time.
Okay.
They're already great. So they're not proactively checking in. They're not asking, how are you doing with your new skills? How are you doing on your relationship with these people? How are you able to help these two people work together?
Yeah.
They're not asking those questions or down at that level. They're just trusting that it's getting done.
Interesting. It's one of those things where you have to ask for help, no matter what position you're in.
Yeah.
And if you continue to just push, then eventually leadership is going to go, wait a minute, hold on.
Yeah.
We promoted you. We haven't really had to help you and step in. But leadership also needs to go, oh, okay, well, let's get you the training that you need, any of those things. So what are some early indicators maybe that truly signal leadership potential before someone is given that formal title?
I would say if you see signs of lateral and upward influence.
Okay.
So if you see someone who doesn't have the positional authority, but they're able to communicate, collaborate, and get help or compliance or buy-in from people lateral to them or above them, that's a sign that they've got some of those base skills that will help them succeed as a leader. Secondly, and maybe the one people will think of is if they have respect of their peers or they're looked at as a leader already.
Yeah.
But I don't mention that one first because it's maybe a little more obvious. But if you see them able to navigate the organization outside the hierarchical structure, that's a great sign that somebody's got capacity to step up.
Well, and it also shows great initiative too, where they're not afraid to go and speak to somebody that's higher than them. They're not, I'm not going to go to a vice president or any of those things. They have, again, the initiative to say, this person needs to know this and I'm going to go and bring it to them.
Yeah.
And also instead of holding it in too, which is not always a good thing.
And I would go a step further and say if employers want to know or test for this, then a great way to do it without worrying about the risk of a promotion or like putting them in a position too soon is to assign them to a committee or a group that has a project to do. And because a lot of times projects don't have strict reporting lines.
They can't.
Right. And you've got to be a little cross-functional. So if you take a leader or an employee you think might be able to lead and assign them to that project and then see how they do in that environment where there's a little less structure. And if you see some, if they start to succeed there, that kind of lets you test for that.
That's a great way to really see if they are ready.
Yeah.
Give them a project, see how they do, see how people follow them.
Yes.
Is also a big thing.
How are folks reacting to them?
Yes. If people are resistant or there's a lot of conflict, then maybe this person isn't ready yet. I like that idea. So why is psychological safety foundational to high-performing teams? And where do leaders most commonly misunderstand that?
Yes. So it's critical, right? If listeners and viewers of this podcast don't already know about Google's study of 108 teams across their organization where psych safety was listed as like the number one predictor of effectiveness. If you don't already know that, then Google that study. Go read up on that. But here's what I think people miss about this is, I'll tell a story. When I was in high school, I turned 15 and I had my learner's permit, and my dad and I each put in half the money to get a 1983 Blazer. It was like one of the early models that had all the smog equipment and was computerized versus kind of the older carbureted cars.
Okay, yeah.
And none of that worked well. So things would go wrong on the engine all the time. And these lights would come on the dash, and it was very expensive to fix them.
Of course.
You couldn't always figure out what was causing that. And so a great solution in my 16-year-old mind was electrical tape, where I would just tape over the light and keep driving. As long as it starts, you can keep going. when you don't have psychological safety on a team, what you're doing is taping over every warning light on your dashboard. Your temperature, your oil, your fuel getting low, your battery getting low, all of those things. Because psychological safety allows people to talk about problems or potential problems, fears, concerns, or anything that could get you in trouble. If you don't have psychological safety, people will not bring that up because they're afraid of what could happen.
Yeah.
And so you as a leader, if you haven't created that environment, you're just taping over all the warning lights, and now you don't know what's going on anymore because everyone will only reflect to you smiling faces and great reports, and no one says, this is off the rails, this is behind, I can't get these people to do it, and I don't know what to do next, and I'm afraid you're going to think I'm incompetent if I say that. So I'm not going to tell you until the project just gets to the deadline and it fails or it's not done.
Yeah.
So just to make it really practical,
like
peel the tape off
please.
By making it okay for people to fail, make a mistake, have a bad idea, have a question, maybe not be doing something that you think they ought to be able to do. But if they can't, you want to know that sooner and get them up to speed versus just
taping over it.
Yeah.
That's a great story. I hope that you use that a lot because I was picturing going, did the engine blow up, Dr. Phillip, because you kept taping
what
over?
What happened multiple times in high school is that I would go out to the parking lot, my car wouldn't start.
Oh, okay.
And I got towed, I got jumped, all those things. So yeah, there are consequences.
There definitely are. And sometimes the new and fancy car isn't always the best solution. Those tried and true are. Well, so what are some of the daily actions then that most effectively build trust and accountability on teams?
Acknowledging and correcting mistakes.
Okay.
And I mean your own.
Okay.
So as a leader, if you daily demonstrate the ability and the willingness to acknowledge a mistake and then to take whatever step is needed to correct that, you will build trust.
Okay.
Because people won't think it's safe to do until the leader does it.
Yes.
And so whatever behavior you want to see in the team, you must model that first, and especially ones that might feel a little bit vulnerable. Instead of making an excuse for that, explaining it away, or just ignoring it like it didn't happen, to say, hey, I realized in the meeting yesterday I got a little bit heated.
Yeah.
And I wish I had phrased some things differently. I just want to say that's not acceptable in this room, and I'm the first one that needs to acknowledge it.
Yeah.
I have already gone and talked to Joe and apologized because I belittled him in the meeting, or whatever that was.
Yes.
Hopefully it wasn't that bad, but whatever that is, acknowledging it.
Yeah.
Even things like if you said you would provide information by a certain time and you haven't provided it.
Yeah.
Or you said you would review something and you haven't reviewed it.
Yep.
That might feel like, well, I'm still going to get to it and they know I'm busy because they know a lot's on my plate. Sure they do. But what do you want them to do when they're in that situation?
Yes.
You want the transparency and the open. So acknowledge and correct those things quickly, and it will build openness and trust.
Okay. Well, especially when you have that trust, the way that the teams can handle, like you say, conflict or positive or negative feedback, and then also that performance expectation, because if you don't have the trust within a team and the expectation is too high, they might just, put that tape over it and say, okay, if that's what leadership is saying, then I guess that's what we have to do. So creating trust in order to handle conflict or feedback is really important.
Yeah. Could I give you a number 2?
I would love it. Yeah.
So I think the number 2 behavior is how you respond when you receive bad news.
Okay.
Or something that's disappointing or not to your expectations.
Yes.
So when I was working in Uganda, there was a Kenyan man who actually worked alongside me in the organization, but he was older than me and I looked at him as a mentor.
Okay.
When we built the university, he became the dean of students, the academic dean, and I saw over and over cases between different students or, violations of the code of conduct or problems would kind of roll up to him.
Yeah.
And I watched the way he handled those scenarios. And you might hear the wildest drama story, like I was sitting there going, I can't believe that just happened. A student came back to campus drunk and was like tearing up a dormitory. And you're like, this is,
Yeah.
And this Kenyan man had this great sense of calm.
Wow.
And whenever he heard bad news, his response was, okay. And then people would tell him the next thing. He would say, okay. And people would dump the whole story out to this guy because there was no negative reaction coming off of him. There was no facial expression of anger or disappointment. There was no judgment coming off. Now, the situation did need to get handled.
I'm sure.
And it was handled. But the way he received bad news just became a model for me, because I thought, how many leaders respond emotionally?
Yes.
And then the employees would go, better be careful before you tell the boss that. Because I remember how he or she reacted last time.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get that. So if you want to build trust, become very aware of how you respond when people tell you something you didn't want to hear.
Yep.
And if your response is non-threatening, even if you need to make a correction.
Yes.
But if it's non-threatening, people will begin to trust that, okay, nobody's going to get shot, even if we really blew it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So understanding your emotional intelligence, especially when it comes to your self-awareness and your self-regulation, is key in that leadership role.
Yes.
Beautiful. So what does a strong leadership pipeline actually look like? And where do most leadership organizations get it wrong?
Yeah. So, a pipeline, just by definition, is that there's a continuous flow.
Yep.
Like one after another. And business owners, business leaders are really familiar with a sales pipeline. Right.
Yeah.
You need to have, incoming leads, and then you're nurturing them, and then they turn to prospects, and then there's a proposal, and there's this pipeline. And if at any point there's an air bubble in your pipeline, it's not good. The leaders immediately they know you can't have a bubble in your sales pipeline.
Yes.
Or your revenue's going to do this, and you're going to have to make painful adjustments. Well, a leadership pipeline should be looked at the same way, that there is someone behind every position, ideally in the whole organization. But if you have limited resources, then at least your key people leaders need to have someone ready to step in, such that if this person leaves for any reason, voluntary, involuntary, or they're promoted or shifted to another department, someone is ready to step into that role immediately. That's what a leadership pipeline would look like.
Absolutely, yeah.
All the way up to the CEO, but all the way down to any function that needs to be done in the organization. We pay a lot of attention to the sales pipeline.
Yes.
The leadership pipeline can actually be more costly.
Okay.
Because if you need to replace a director and none of your senior managers are prepared to step into that role, it could end up costing you $250,000.
Yeah.
Very quickly, just, in lost time and productivity, in headhunter fees, in training and getting somebody back up, plus the, salary and incentives that you're going to have to pay to go find somebody.
Yeah.
Not even talking about culture impacts.
No.
Or someone accepting that. And the higher up in leadership that person is, the more challenging it is to bring someone from the outside, especially in a privately held organization.
Absolutely. I mean, let's even think about you get somebody in, which takes time, but then they have to get up to speed too. And depending on the complexity of the business, that might take 6 months. What is lacking, what is missing, where they're still learning. Yeah. So one of the highest risk leadership decisions any organization makes is choosing who will eventually succeed the president or the CEO. So how do founders and CEOs who are preparing that exit approach it differently? And how can aspiring leaders actually prepare themselves for the very different demands of a role such as president or CEO?
Yeah. So I think the first thing I would encourage current CEOs and founders to think long and hard about is starting immediately.
Okay.
Don't wait until you think it's, 2 to 3 years out. One of the most successful examples that I can think of in the work that I've been part of is a new CEO who came into the organization, and based on where he was in his career, he anticipated an 8 to 10 year runway that he would have as the CEO. And on day one, he said, I want to begin now working on identifying who's going to be my successor. And that person is probably several layers down in the organization.
Oh, okay.
And that intentionality to say, like, from the day I take the job, I'm thinking about who's going to succeed me. And, what would be the worst thing that could happen? You might pour into somebody that serves in another role, and they're still building the organization. Maybe they're not into that very top seat. So starting early is key. I think secondly, and this is a little more subtle, is CEOs and founders becoming really aware of how their own emotions are impacting the whole process.
Yeah.
There can be a lot of fear, and CEOs don't typically think of themselves as being fearful.
Yeah.
They're bold. They're courageous. They're risk takers.
Right? Yeah.
But all of us have those unspoken fears in our minds of what if I get it wrong, or what if they mess it up after I leave, or what if I pick the wrong person, or what if they don't keep the culture that we worked so hard to build.
True.
Those are emotional responses. They need to be acknowledged. So you can't stop them, but you need to acknowledge them so they're not silently swaying your thinking. Okay. And the other set of emotions is even harder to grapple with, and that's, who am I going to be after I hand over, and where is my value going to be?
Yeah.
You remember we were talking about
of course.
Promotion, you got to shift where you locate your value.
Yes.
That's when you're promoted out of being CEO into being chairman of your life.
Yep.
Then how do you shift the location of your value?
Yeah.
Or how do you prepare for that? And if you don't, then what I've seen over and over is CEOs just having too much grip and not being able to let go a piece at a time, not being able to hand things off. Then it becomes a really abrupt and difficult transition.
Yeah.
So I'd say that on the CEO side, acknowledging those emotions, becoming present to them, and then letting them be part of the decision committee in their own mind, but not letting them silently drive it.
Yeah, don't let it control you type of thing.
Yes. I think there's a real concern for, getting the right person in that role. The reality is no one is going to be who they were, and no one's going to be who they are at the end of their career. They were not that person 20 years ago.
No.
So resetting expectations and being able to acknowledge strengths and weaknesses in people, and then work with what you've got to begin to shape and cultivate and invest. I think that's really key.
Yeah, focus on their strengths and then build around it.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, last question. If there were one mindset shift or piece of advice that leaders should adopt now to be ready for the future, what would it be?
I would pick the advice one, and I would say master the art of asking good questions and become a ninja at listening.
Okay.
The future is unknown by definition.
Of course.
And nobody can see around the corner or see it coming. But if you are talking rather than asking and listening, this future will sneak up on you and smack you in the face. If you become a skillful questioner of people around you, of your marketplace, of your customers, of broader trends, and you become a ninja at listening, you will get indications of what's coming. You will see signs and trends, and you'll notice the subtle things because you're essentially cultivating a curious mindset or a learner mindset. And I think that's the very best way to approach the future. If you're talking, like right now today, you're asking questions and I'm talking. I'm not learning anything because I'm talking. If I want to learn something, then I have to just be quiet and listen, or maybe ask a good question and then sit back and let that develop.
Yes.
I think that those are the skills, not just for leadership,
Yeah.
but preparing yourself for the future.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love asking questions, and it's really just about being curious about anything, about somebody, about a project, about a new skill. Be curious in life and sit back and listen to what it has to offer. Love it. Well, that wraps up today's episode of Working Progress. Thank you to you, Dr. Phillip, for sharing such powerful insight into what it takes to lead for the future, from building trust and psychological safety to identifying leadership potential, to navigating one of the most critical decisions any organization faces: who will lead next. If you found today's episode valuable, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, or share this episode with a colleague or fellow leader. Your support helps us continue to bring these valuable conversations to life. And remember, future-ready leadership isn't about titles, control, or past success. It's about developing people, creating trust, and preparing the next generation to carry the mission forward with clarity and confidence. As always, thank you for listening. And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep making progress. Take care, everyone.